Okay, makers. So this is a video where I am interviewing a collector of knives. I am with Rowan. He runs the African Time Flies Instagram page. We started chatting and I wanted to just do an interview with him to find out exactly what goes on in the mind of somebody who collects knives. What does he look for? What will get you on his radar, or not just him, but any collector at large, and what is it that you need to do in order to start getting collectors interested in your work. So an idea of some of the knives in his collection. This is just a few. I asked him to stop taking them out for me because it's going to be a lot of work for him to put them back. You got a whole lot of Niels Roosters knives, Jan Potgieter as well. You got some Andre Torbens as well, and a few other makers also. So we've been chatting, and he's been throwing out his pearls of wisdom and what he looks for. So I said, you know what, let's put the camera on and let me get his thoughts and views on it. So Rowan, thank you for taking the time out to see me. I really appreciate it. Again, I'm doing this for the makers, purely for us to understand exactly what it is that you look for. How does somebody get onto your radar? What do you see in a knife that makes you want to buy it, and or any other bits and pieces of information that you feel is necessary for me to understand? So just take us through your knife collection journey. Where did it start? How did it start? And what gets you going, if I can say that?
Sure, difficult to say. I mean, I just initially started buying whatever I saw and I liked, and as time goes on, you know, you pick up one or two makers that you appreciate their quality or their style, and then you just start picking up one or two more of them. And when I really get into a maker, I tend to buy almost everything I can get my hands on from that specific maker. And you know, there's a lot of ordinary out there, and I'm always looking for something that the maker takes that one step up and is a little bit better than average. You know, the basic average knives probably have not that much interest to me. I like detailed workmanship, and I don't mind paying for, in fact, I tell all the makers this, I want the best of what they can possibly produce, and I don't mind paying a little extra for their custom stuff. So that's really what I'm looking for, you know. Price is actually the last thing I'm looking at.
Cool. So let's talk about, you mentioned the best work that they can do. What do you consider the best work? What do you look out for in a knife? So let's take away the fancy materials. Yeah. What do you look out for in a knife when you're going to buy a knife? And are you only looking at guild members? Are you only looking at members of clubs? What determines you buying a knife from someone who makes knives?
You know, there's from the traditional sense, guild members is probably the first point of call. I looked at a lot of all the guild members' names. I researched all of their knives, but these days the guild is just one aspect. You know, there's lots of knife makers that I buy from that aren't guild members, and they supply mostly overseas. So the guild is, you know, it's a standard measure, and you know, you're generally getting a reasonable quality knife maker. So I do really appreciate the guys that are in the guild, and us. It's something that I actively celebrate. In fact, like Nico Bosman, for example, just got the guild, and it makes me very happy, and I bought his guild submission set, actually. But it's not the only thing I look for. I mean, some of the makers I go for, I mean, I've got a Wesley Liversage knife on my desk, for example. I mean, this is one of the best fixed blade makers I've ever seen. And Wesley's not a guild member, and that doesn't mean anything to me. But you know, I take a careful look at the detail that goes into this knife, and you can see that every single little detail is carefully thought out, and he spent a lot of time in finishing everything. Whether in this case it's a polished blade, it doesn't always have to be polished, it could be satin finished or however. I do, when it comes to fixed blades, I do like a taper tang. I'm quite particular with that. It doesn't necessarily mean it has to be on every knife. Some knives have that sort of style that it doesn't suit. But I appreciate when guys take the time for that. Little details like having the extra different color liners in there. And I do like certain interesting materials. You know, I'd rather pay for some of the better materials as well. Steel is quite common. I mean, a lot of the guys use the M690s, and that's it. There's not a huge amount of variance. I collect a lot of folders, so there's obviously a lot of variance in different steels there. But I think steel is more a fad and a fashion that, you can pick up different steels. It's more the heat treatment and how the guys actually finish it off. So that doesn't worry me that much, but I'm most interested in that it's finished off correctly. I'm very, very detail oriented. So if I pick up any flaw on a knife that I don't like, I tend to turn off that maker for a while. It really doesn't interest me. So I'd like guys to take their time and attention to make sure their stuff's finished. And while I've got Wesley Liversage on my desk, I mean, even little things like the sheath, most knife makers don't even concentrate on their sheath. It's almost like an afterthought. But when I look at this sort of sheath, I mean, details like the edges are rounded, for example, the stitching work is brilliant, the fit is perfect, and he's got his branding on there. I mean, why not? You must brand yourself as a knife maker. You can see when the guys have taken the time and effort to really think about something correctly, and I'm certainly willing to support that sort of knife maker. Unfortunately, I don't really have time for average, and a lot of the average knives that I picked up along the way I might end up selling. But the exceptional ones, certainly, I want to make, I want to keep forever, ideally. So that's really it, and you never know. Look, with the advent of social media, I think that's a big thing. In the old days, you needed maybe the guild to get on the map. These days, guys can promote themselves actively online and get on the radar anywhere in the world quite quickly. I do like guys that actively promote themselves. That's another big thing I must mention, because a lot of guys, there's no real history, and I've got some of the best makers out there historically that overseas no one's ever heard of them. And I'll tell you why it's important for me. I work in investment markets, and if I buy a knife and I'm spending my hard-earned money on a knife, I want to make sure that my money is protected, and if I sell it in 10 or 20 or 30 years time, that there's actually a value to it. And I like it when the guys taking the time with their social media presence and they're actively marketing themselves, possibly overseas or wherever. I mean, I pick up beautiful knives and I'm trying to tag the guy on Instagram and they don't have an Instagram page, for example. It irritates me. Why not? It's the easiest thing for them to do. So you need some sort of encyclopedia of the knife maker or history, and the guild's done that fairly well in the past, where they've had books and things like that with. They haven't done it very well in the present. I mean, the last one I got is from 2010. But I think these days it's more other mediums. Make sure you're marketing yourself correctly through social media and through whatever other mediums, shows, etc.
Yeah. So let's talk about shows. Which shows do you frequent? Do you frequent shows? And when you are at shows, what are you looking for when you are at someone's table? And the reason I'm asking this is because Brooklyn Knife Show is coming up. It's one of the biggest shows, if not the biggest show that we have in the country. Lots of new makers there, lots of experienced makers there, guild members there. So everyone is in the pot. What would make a maker stand out to you if you are busy browsing? Let's say, for example, a Brooklyn Knife Show coming up next month.
So the problem I have is because I buy a lot and I buy frequently, I generally, once I got into a maker, almost anything they make, I say I like that one, send it. It's almost blank check.
Okay, fantastic.
So often by the time a show comes, I've already got what I want. It's not really an issue. But I love meeting knife makers and chatting to them. And nothing replaces, these things are tactile. You want to hold and feel and touch them. So generally, if I go to a show, it's with a specific purpose, that there's a maker that has come across my radar that I really want to go and see their stuff. The guys I've already got, I've got lots of experience with their stuff, but I still want to go and see them, and it's a social thing, and chat to them, and maybe they've got something interesting there that I could pick up. But often I go with a purpose, like the last guild show, for example, I went with a specific purpose of picking up a few Andra Thorburns and Harukas Blomeris, actually. And then there's always a Niels Pretorius with someone that'll sidetrack me along the way and sell me something beautiful. You never know what you're going to find at these shows, and that's why the knife makers need to attend them. So I think, guys, it's a mix. They need to have something interesting on their table. They need to have a decent display. They need to be personable. They need to be willing and open to talk. To me, it's about the story with the knife maker. I want to chat to them. I want to understand what they're doing. And sometimes they're doing something completely unique, and they can chat about it. These days, tastes sort of vary, and it depends on what you're looking for at that time. I like a lot of your arty sort of knives as well. So someone that's taking the time for a little bit of extra engraving work, scrimshaw, or something else like that, I appreciate that sort of thing. But because I've got such a huge collection of a number of 100 knives, I can't sort of buy everything. So, something turns your head that you maybe not expecting.
Yes.
But typically I'll try and attend the major shows if I can. Brooklyn, the guild shows are a must for me. I mean, know you're going to see something decent over there. It could be Brooklyn or any of the other shows that happen down the line. I was quite keen to get to the Cape Town show. Unfortunately, I didn't make that one. But as I said, because I'm buying all the time, it's almost meaningless for me, except for just it's a nice outing to go and see the makers, have a good chat to them, see what else is out there that you haven't thought of.
Yes, 100%, I'm with you. So I want to go back a few steps, and you mentioned attention to detail on a knife. What are the things that will put you off and say, okay, this maker never put enough attention to detail in his blade for me to consider it as a potential buyer?
It could be a lot of things.
Give me top five.
Got,
give me five.
A folder recently as an example that it wasn't opening and closing smoothly. That's a no-go completely. It just, I think the washers or something wasn't aligned correctly. That just turned me off that maker completely, and I sold it, out of it. The things like your screws and the scales, screws that are different heights, no go. It's a definite no go. Sometimes you get one that's flush and one that's sticking up. I've had a specific maker that everyone's raving about. I won't mention names, but because the screw was slightly out, I got turned off from that maker. I won't buy another knife from it. I picked up knife makers where the scale has a slight little deformation or something. They should have thrown it away and got another piece. It's little things like that. If they're not interested in taking the time to finish it properly, I won't go there. What I pick up often is, the sanding and the grinds and those sort of things, that there's a scratch on the knife, or a little area that they haven't done correctly on the blade. I do pick that up quite a bit, actually.
Yes.
Also, concern to me, even the edge. If the edge looks uneven or something like that, it worries me, because you can see that the person hasn't really taken the time to do it properly. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. When it comes to folders are an art in themselves, and it could be something simple like the ergonomics, that they haven't thought about the flipper design because it sticks out and it irritates you, or it scratches your phone in your pocket, or sometimes you can pick up that a knife maker doesn't even carry a knife. It's quite scary.
Yes.
It needs to be practical,
Yes.
and sometimes, like a hunter or a fighter like this, I don't know if it's practical. I'm not going to go and fight anybody with it. So it's very much a visual thing to me, It's just looking at the finishes. But things like your folders, you carry them around and they need to feel right in the pocket and in the hand. I pick up a lot of folders that are very chunky and fat and they just don't feel right.
We call a mate of mine and myself, we got a joke, we call them pants pullers, weigh down your pants. If you need to keep your
But sometimes that's what you want, I've got I'm just thinking, for example, Andre de Villiers. I've got a number of Andre de Villiers now that I love, that are big tactical folders, and they're lovely. But I love every sort of knife, from those sort of things to the little Jan Portgieters, when I look at a little a knife like this, what a beautiful, elegant knife. And I think every knife has got its occasion, where you want to take it to. And I like carrying knives with different things. If I'm going out to a black tie or something, I'll take a little knife with me. Even if I don't need a knife, it's irrelevant. I like it with me.
Yes.
And some of the bigger, I've got the arty knives like this. To me, this is not something I would ever carry. This is an artwork, I see this very much as an artwork that must be on display. But it is a relatively heavy knife, and that's sort of irrelevant because it's fit for the purpose that I wanted. The guys must just take their time. But I certainly appreciate the little extra details. I've honestly said to a number of knife makers, if they tell me, listen, this knife's $6,000, I say, listen, I want the best you can do. I don't mind if it's using Damascus steel, using Makumi, whatever it is that you think would work with that knife, and it's going to cost a bit more, that's fine. If I want something, I want the best of their abilities.
Yes, I'm with you.
You know, so whatever that might be, and everyone's got their own specific style.
That's it.
I don't want guys to try and copy each other. You know, you look for someone that has their unique style, and there's so many. I mean, we've got great makers.
We do.
I love our South African makers, and that's the funny thing. I mean, there's thousands of makers in the world, but I don't have that much interest in going to go and order an American maker, for example. I've got a few from Italy and whatever, but you know, you seem to have a personal passion or a connection to our local makers. You know, I just that's what interests me. I like supporting our local makers, and I'm always looking for something good and interesting. Yeah.
I got you 100%. I think you spoke quite a lot about folders, and I think a large portion of the new makers and upcoming makers start off on fixed blades. So what advice can you give in regards to fixed blades that you come off the top of your head that you can think about? What interests you? What do you feel is a must-have knife to make as a fixed blade maker? Because I know the benchmark was set with the hunters. I know everyone wants to make a hunter and a Bob Loveless type hunter. So from your perspective, what do you feel would be a knife that they need to be able to make well, and or any other feedback or suggestions that you can give to them over and above what you've said already?
You know, I don't know. There's so many fixed blade options, you know, and that's the interesting thing with the knife world. Yeah, I've got lots of your standard sort of Skinner type knives that you know, like a Niels Pretorius Model H. That's a classic knife that I think every knife maker should make and make well. Whether you're a hunter or not, you know, it seems to be a pitted grey kisu. You know, it's a classic knife that seems to have mass appeal. I've got a lot of that type of knife. So lately, I'm looking a lot at your Loveless style fighters. I really love the fighters, and you know the sort of the grinds on both sides and getting the right angles. You know that. It's something I look for in a knife, that it's done correctly, and I know it takes time to do that correctly. It does. But it could also be the little things, you know, like even the size of the steel. A lot of guys go and cut costs and go and use the thinner piece of steel because it's cheaper, you know. But if a knife style suits a specific size of steel, use it. You know, it needs to feel right in the hand with the right weight and so on. But yeah, so I can't say there's anything specific style that I'm definitely looking for in a fixed blade. There's so many. I mean, I tend to like from small to large. So, you know, you could get guys that specialize just in small utility knives as an example. That's great, whatever. Then make them interesting and make them arty.
There we go. Okay, I think we've spoken for quite some time. This is quite a long video, and lots of people don't have very long ability or the ability to watch very long videos. So thank you so much for your time, Rowan. I really do appreciate it. And guys, this is Z out.